everybody, welcome back to Road to Master. Hope you're all having an amazing day. We are here looking at another game that I played recently. This one was a game in the Yorkshire League. I was moved up to the first team for some reason, I think due to lack of players. And it was a pretty big match that we had to do well in, which is great. put a bit of pressure on it straight away. But I felt this was an interesting game. So I'm here with the black pieces. My opponent is a 1755, a very solid player. I don't think I've really played him before. Might have done like one rapid game against him. But yeah, hopping straight in. We start off with E4. So my response against E4 is the perk. And we go into a pretty typical perk structure. I think I've said before, but F3, the point of F3 is to potentially play G4 in the near future. The bishop on E3, lining up already for a queen on D2 with H4, G4, quick attacks on the king side, you know. And the way I sort of counter this is by going C6 and B5. That's my setup for the perk, right? And the point of that is if they ever castle queenside, so they can have like this rook staying on the H file with more immediate pressure, I'm going to launch this counterattack, and it's actually surprisingly quick and surprisingly deadly as well on the long castled king, right? So that's the point of C6. Yes, it denies my knight a square, but I'm not looking to push on the king side, so I don't really care about the knight coming to C6. It's probably better on D7, being a more defensive piece. It can jump in eventually, but I'm not too fussed about that. They go bishop C4, which is not the best move. The point of C6 is to push B5. So with them playing bishop to C4, you just give me B5 with a tempo, right? Which is exactly sort of what I want. So I'm quite happy with this. They obviously go back, and I think here A5 would be the better move. Just expanding more on the queen side, gaining more space, because it comes with a tempo, right? They have to play A3, otherwise you're going to trap the bishop. Say they play something silly, you just trap the bishop, and then you're very happy. They maybe sack on F7, but you know, it's not somewhere you really want to be as white. So they have to play A3. So I was a bit worried about wasting a move, but I failed to realize that the move actually came with a tempo on the bishop. So it was basically a free move. I should have played it, but I didn't. I castled instead, which I don't think is horrible, but it's not making the most out of the situation. Queen D2, very natural, I think. It wants H4, but I would rather get development, you know. Then I go bishop E6. So bishop E6 is not a particularly good move because apparently the computer likes this structure for white. I don't mind it as black. You know, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong. But the computer doesn't like it, which is okay. Yeah, sure. I don't know why. I think maybe because they can block up the center or something, or maybe because this pawn's a bit looser. I don't really understand it. I think this is fine for black, but the computer doesn't like it. The reason I played bishop e6 is because I want rid of this bishop. And the reason I want rid of this bishop, we can have a look if they decide to play, rather than bishop c4, something like bishop e2. So I would go b5. Queen d2 seems natural. Say we castle h3. So what I really want out of this position is e5. And the reason I want e5 is because if they decide to take, then maybe they swap off queens and I get the rook on the open file. I'm happy. I've got this controlling a lot of space. And this is just sort of a nice sort of structure. It opens up the center when they're looking to push on the king side, which is something you should be doing. So I've been told. Anyway, and if they decide to push d5 instead, what I really want here is to push b4. Ignore this temporarily, because if I take straight away, the knight takes, and then queen takes does not look nice at all. This is a super, super weak pawn, a backwards pawn. They can long castle, get instant pressure on this, and I'm done for. I'm pretty sure. At least down a pawn, anyway. The computer took a while for that to load, but yeah. It says plus 0.85. So it's a reasonable advantage for white. So the reason I play b5 first before taking is to just get rid of this knight. And it's saying knight goes back to d1. Then I can take, and this is a lot nicer. I've got potential e4 pushes. You know, this pawn's potentially weak. And it's nicer. I can potentially push f5 as well and completely open up this diagonal. So that's the reason why you push b4. So going back to where we were with bishop e6, the problem is this bishop's also contesting d5, so I can't do these tricks just yet. I play bishop e6 to get rid of this bishop, is my grand plan. Luckily, they let me have my idea, and they decide to go bishop h6 first. Now, I'm just going to leave this, because I would just take with my king, and they don't have the open rook just yet. I can go h5 and try block up the king side a bit. So what I do, I just go ahead and take, right? I just go ahead and take. I've gotten what I wanted, where I get rid of this bishop, and I'm happy. They decide to do a little intermezzo. Rather than capturing first, they take my bishop. I take back, and then they open with the A file. Now, this I think is a good move, because it's sort of it prevents maybe some pushes. Maybe you can get the rook in. Apparently the computer lost it. Queen d8, no. E3, no. Bishop h6. There we go. They take with the c pawn the computer wants, and I guess maybe that's because you get like a bit more pressure on these pawns. I'm not quite sure, but they took with the a pawn, which I don't think is bad necessarily. It opens up the a file, and now I'm free to go e5, which is exactly what I wanted out of the position. So I'm quite happy here. They push. Again, I think taking is fine for us, and then we go ahead and push b4. Get this knight out of the way, and then we get exactly what I described earlier. So I'm super, super happy here. I think I've got good chances. I just need to develop. What I did next is not something I should have done. I decided to go rook e8. And my idea behind rook e8 is that the king's still uncastled. I can push e4, and I can get a lot of pressure quite easily on this king, I think. So I'm looking to sort of open up the position. Now, the main problem with this idea is that when you push e4, you open up this diagonal, which is quite strong against your king. And the queen can just come in and check straight away, which isn't immediately scary, but combined with some other pieces could potentially be a huge problem. The way you actually play this is just go a5, secure this pawn, stop this rook coming in, and then you just target their weaknesses, right? You just really go after these two pawns in particular. If they go for c3, you could take, but I think that would fix their pawn structure a bit. It says you do actually take. They're going to take with the pawn. They're not going to take with the knight, because then you leave the double isolated pawns. And then what? Maybe you go queen b5 and hit this. The computer's taking a minute to load. Yeah, Queen B6. It's saying. Then knight E2. Um, because if they try to defend this pawn, then you can go A4. So they would have to go maybe Queen B2. At which point, they would lose this pawn. So you're actually having a really hard time to defend this pawn. If they go B4, then knight BD7. And the point is that this is permanently backwards, I guess, with the open file. So that's the sort of way you play this. You play it slower, and you just go after their weaknesses. I decided not to, and try to break open the center. The problem is they can just castle at basically any time. Yeah, which isn't great. They go knight E3, gets the knight off the back rank, very natural. Defending this pawn as well. I go Queen B6, trying to sort of cover these dark squares, cover the B pawn as well. By the way, if they just take this, I thought this was fine for us. Queen D7. Knight B6. Apparently is the way to play. Oh, yeah. And you just cover the rook. You just cover rook and you've got these central pawns they can run, right? So they go knight E3. I go Queen B6 to cover this and cover this square so I can potentially push E4. H4 I thought was a bit weak. I'd rather get castled personally. I go H5, but I think they also wanted this square for their knight as well, which makes sense because the knight could potentially come in and cause some problems. And at this point, I thought, because I've covered this square, I've got my rook on E8, and they're still not castled. Let's continue with the plan and break in the center, right? They decide to not take. I think if they take, they're pretty much done for. Maybe take with the knight, maybe take with the rook. I don't think rook's probably better because you've just got the immediate pin. And then king there to defend. So if they go there, you've not really fixed your problem. You're still in the pin. If they go there, you've got rook takes. The king can't take, the queen has to take, and then you've got the fork here, which is quite nice. Very tricky moves there. So they decide to, and by the way, I think castles probably works here, but then you've still got this pin, which is unfortunate. And yeah, some of the same ideas apply, I think. So they decide to push. The problem with pushing is that you basically give me this square, which is what I do. And the idea is that if they take, we take back and we're hitting this knight, which is kind of awkward for them. They could go in, but I don't really know if that does anything because they can't really go anywhere after. To be fair, we're struggling. We can't really play F6 because the knight comes in there. But it looks a bit misplaced, I think. The computer, I think, wants knight G1. And then maybe we can think about E3. Or we just get this other knight in the game. But you're further away from castling. I've got the pawn that can run. I quite like this for black. So instead they go knight C4. Which hits my queen, hits this pawn. And this pawn's still under attack as well, which is quite awkward. I go queen c5 to defend everything, which allows rook a5. I'm feeling the pressure a bit here. But I found this really cheeky move, e3, which I was quite proud of seeing. And I actually saw it quite fast. I think the move is queen d3. At which point you just go back and again just develop. I think we're lacking in development again. It seems to be a recurring problem at the minute. I thought queen d1 was bad because it allows e2. Which doesn't look nice at all. They can't castle basically ever. because this is all covered. So it just looks really, really awkward for white. They went, though, Queen E2, which I'm sort of happy with because now they don't have access to this check, right? Before they could go Queen D4 check, and now they can't. So I'm a bit happier here. I think the move was actually Queen D4, and I considered that, but I didn't really like the way Knight D6 looked. I was a bit tired at this point, to be honest, and my calculation was wearing thin. So yeah, I think this was just a bit too much. I felt it was the right thing to do, but the safer option, I think, is Queen C7. They castle. By the way, Queen C7 as well. It's hitting both the knight and the rook. So if this knight ever gets kicked, the rook is free, basically. So there are potentially some ideas surrounding Knight C6, especially if we can support D5. So if the queen goes to like D8, say they waste a move somehow, maybe Knight C6 is viable, because takes push, and then where's the knight going? The knight goes back, and then the rook is hanging. That's not a calculated thing, right? Because they actually have rook D1 here as well, which is really quite cool. So we can't take. Apparently, queen takes H4 here works. That's insane. Oh, queen takes H4. Duh, on the other side of the board. I don't know my alphabet. Anyway, that's just an example of an idea I potentially had. I don't think it ever had the opportunity to work, but they castle. And I'm a bit afraid here of F5. I think that's... I don't think it's bad, but again, I think I didn't want to calculate it all out. Of opening up the F file and everything, and then potentially getting like a counter attack on my king. I didn't like the look of that, so I played F5, which I would class as a blunder. The computer says it's a mistake, and it goes to plus 1.17. And the problem is you've opened up two squares for the knights. Knight G5 and E6. Now, E6 is a horrific square to allow, because you've got this straight away, the fork on the queen, supported by the pawn as well. So I'm panicking a tiny bit, and I think I've just thrown away the game and potentially thrown away the chances of the team winning, which is not something you want to be thinking about mid-game. But I try to keep calm, and I come up with this idea of Queen D8. Now, Queen D8 doesn't escape the fork. The problem is I saw through this knight, and I looked at this H4 pawn, which is weak. Now, I think the safe thing to do for them is just G3, at which point I've got to try escape somehow. I thought maybe Knight C6 here potentially worked, but here you do have Rook D1 with a pin on the queen, so you can't take the knight. Which is a shame. I don't know what I would have done. Really, I don't know what I would have done, to be honest. I don't know what the best move. Queen E7, apparently just get out of the fork. But it's at this point I'm seriously regretting not playing A5 because this rook is annoying. I would have liked to keep my queen about here. And this knight, by the way, still undeveloped. So is this rook, which is great. Luckily, they fell for the bait and immediately sacked the exchange. Like, you can't think about this. Firstly, this is a fork. Secondly, it's exactly what you planned, right? So you don't even think about it. You sack the exchange. Maybe you can go for D5. I don't... They still have Rook D1 though, so... But you just take, because you're threatening mate on H2, supported by the knight. And the only way they can stop that is with G3. So for the exchange, you get two pawns, and you sort of force off the queens, right? Maybe h4 is playable here, but I just trade it off. Simplify, right? I've got this, which is severely annoying for them. And I can potentially pick up this e-pawn. Maybe if the king gets too far away, I can push h-pawn all the way to the end. I go knight c6, hitting the knight, developing with a tempo. I thought maybe rook d5 worked, which just seems a bit annoying, really. I think maybe rook d8. And then maybe they just pick up this pawn, right? Maybe they just pick up this pawn. I don't think we can defend this, really. And I think we're probably playing for a bit of a draw. They decided to go, however, rook a6, which I think is a bit weak. It gives me a bit too much because they allow knight d4. Knight d4, I think, is a really scary move. I give up this pawn, and the whole point is that they take, I get knight c2, and all of a sudden, I'm covering the promotion square. The king can't really do anything. You know, the king comes in here. I have this fork straight away. Right, the knight is still guarding the pawn, and they can't come in this way. The rook can't go here to defend it. I'm looking to push and then just push. So this is really, really scary. They've got to be super, super careful here. Luckily, they have this passed pawn, but also my king's quite close, right? I can defend if I want. I could potentially bring this back. Maybe that would be a blunder because you lose out on h2 though. They decide to go e7 though, which is just a blunder and completely wins here for black. The move is d7, rook d7 check. And the reason is, I think then because you allow this knight d6 square straight away, so the rook can't really go to e8. I don't really understand the difference personally. Rook f d1. Apparently. Because you're looking for a mate, I think, is the reason. e2, rook d6 maybe. And then you've got to stop this mate. So you go... Can you not go rook knight h6? Oh, because e7 comes with check as well, which is really annoying. So you go knight e1 check, apparently is the computer move. If they go... That's quite cool. If they go king g1, which seems really natural, you've got knight f3 check, where you check with covering the promotion square as well. That's really cool. If they go downwards, then it's saying h4, and then the same thing as well if they decide to take. So that's really, really tricky. You also have potentially this rook coming in if they take the h-pawn as well. So you go king h3 and then probably check, right? It wants g5. Wow, and that just gets out of that. e7 check. King f7 to cover the promotion. Rook d8. Knight f2. This is an insane sequence. This is really, really crazy. King h2. Knight f3. King g2. King takes e7. Bearing in mind you're threatening promotion. Rook 6 d7. Maybe you get a perpetual here because the king can't ever actually escape upwards. Wow. That's so crazy. That's really, really crazy. Anyway, they played e7. Which is a mistake because now you don't have these mating threats that we saw, which were sort of annoying earlier. I go rook e8. I think it is potentially unnecessary, but it's safe, right? It's safe. They decide to go. If they decide to go, sorry, rook e6, then we just go king f7. And where's this rook going to stay on this pawn, right? It can't actually do anything, so it has to just sort of go back. they go rook d7, and there's a little trick of king f7 here with the knight coming in. I don't think it's bad though, because we have king e6, knight takes, and then we sort of pick everything up anyway. But I decided to go king f6 just to be safe. Stay out of this. And here they go rook d1. I don't see a problem here with e2. Maybe we have to be a bit careful of this coming in, but the problem is we can now go back to f7 because they've blocked this checking square, right? They've stopped their knight coming in by putting the rook on that square. So we can just go ahead and promote, really. Which is kind of what happens. They go rook back to d2. Just looking for, I think, this knight check as well. But we just promote. They check. And we go back to g8. I think here we can go to e6, which is crazy. But we go to g8. We don't go to g7. Because then they take with check. So we just have to avoid this knight check. Apparently, it's not even that. It's... they're all losing. I think they're all losing for white. But it's just, I think, being precise. They decide to take. And then I've got two checks here. I've got a check here, which leads to, I couldn't see like a specific mate. It's saying mate in 8, which I think is a bit much to calculate. So I discarded that and I went for knight c to e2, e3 instead, which leads to a mate in 2, which is a lot easier. If they go h3, I go queen h1 there, and you go h4 for mate, which is what happened. If they decide to go there, then you go queen h1, king up. If they go back again, h4. If they go king up, then you've got queen to f1 mate, which is a nice mate, I think. It's like a dovetail supported by the knight, supported by the other knight, which is really cool. And yeah, that was that. So I managed to come back from, I think, a slightly miserable position, especially after I had to play queen d8. As you know, queen d8 was my response after I played queen c7, f5. Yeah, I wasn't very happy. So I was happy to come back from this position, and happy to get a win for the team. You know, my first game in the A team this season. I was happy with that result, and we ended up drawing the match, I think, which was not the result we wanted. We wanted to win, but considering we were down to two of our higher boards, and they obviously had to bring me in, I think that's a good result given the circumstances. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like if you liked, please subscribe if you really liked, and I'll catch you guys all tomorrow. Bye bye.